Imagine walking through the Taklamakan Desert in China's far west. Under the blazing sun, there sit rows of solar panels and patches of green farmland where there used to be nothing but sand. This isn't Saudi Arabia or the UAE. It is Xinjiang, thousands of kilometers from Riyadh and Basra. Yet the scene feels strangely familiar because Beijing is trying to replicate something the Middle East has long provided, a combination of energy, food, and strategic depth. But the looming question is, why is China building what looks like its own Middle East? And to answer that, you have to know how dependent China's modern economy is on foreign oil. After 1993, it became a net importer of crude. Almost half of that oil has come from the Middle East. And by 2023, Saudi Arabia alone supplied about 15% of China's crude imports. And trade between China and the region topped $507 billion in 2022, double the figure in 2017. Those numbers underscore how urgent the Gulf is to China's economy. Supertankers leave ports like Ras Tanura and Basra, sail through the narrow Strait of Hormuz and then through another choke point, the Strait of Malacca, before turning north toward Chinese ports. This oil channel is China's economic lifeline, but also its greatest vulnerability. More than 4/5 of the crude oil China burns has to sail through the Malacca Strait, a passage just 2.8 kilometers wide at its narrowest. In wartime, or even a major diplomatic crisis, a blockade there could strangle China's economy. Chinese strategists refer to this Achilles heel as the Malaa Dilemma, and Beijing's response to counter this has been broad and expensive. One facet of its strategy is to diversify the sources of both energy and the routes by which it arrives, and another is to build up military and diplomatic power so that vital sea lanes stay open. The story of China building its own Middle East touches all of these efforts, and that's why it's so important. It involves pipelines and ports in neighboring countries, giant energy bases in China's deserts, green walls of vegetation, and a soft power campaign to market Chinese ecological know-how. It also includes a diplomatic play that aims to make Beijing, rather than Washington, a central actor in Middle Eastern security. First, the land routes. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, is a 3,000-kilometer network of highways, railways, and pipelines linking Kashgar in Xinjiang to the deep-water port of Gwadar on Pakistan's Arabian Sea coast. Its purpose is to secure and shorten the route for China's energy imports from the Middle East. Analysts estimate that once fully operational, CPEC could cut the journey for oil from some 12,000 kilometers at sea to around 2,400 kilometers, saving billions of dollars in transport costs each year. Gwadar in Pakistan is only a few hundred kilometers from the Strait of Hormuz, offering a backdoor into the Persian Gulf. But this shortcut faces serious obstacles. Much of the corridor traverses mountainous terrain and inflating construction costs. Also, political instability in Pakistan has delayed projects and frightened investors, and separatist groups like the Balochistan Liberation Army have attacked Chinese engineers and infrastructure. As a result, only a fraction of the planned projects have been completed. Yet Beijing persists because the strategic logic is compelling. A functioning CPEC would provide an alternative to the Malacca Strait and tie Pakistan's economy even more closely to China. Further east, the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, CMEC, connects Yunnan province to the Bay of Bengal. Its centerpiece is a pair of pipelines from the port of Kyaukphyu to Yunnan that have been operational since 2017 for oil and 2013 for natural gas. These pipes can deliver around 22 million tons of crude oil and 13 billion cubic meters of gas per year, giving China direct access to the Indian Ocean and the Middle Eastern crude delivered there. The route shortens transit time and reduces dependence on US-controlled choke points. Yet, like the Pakistani corridor, it suffers from instability. Myanmar's civil war has disrupted operations, and the local population has protested land grabs and environmental damage. Even if the Pakistan and Myanmar corridors were to run at full capacity, together they would satisfy only a fraction of China's import needs. But they represent strategic redundancy, a concept central to Beijing's thinking. Apart from support from surrounding countries, China is also trying to create its own sources of energy within its borders. One of the most striking examples is the transformation of Xinjiang's deserts into renewable energy bases. In June 2024, a 3.5 gigawatt solar farm covering more than 32,000 acres came online outside Urumqi. According to the Chinese state asset regulator, This single project can generate roughly 6.09 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity annually, enough to power the entire country of Papua New Guinea for a year. It surpasses 2 other massive solar facilities in western China, each around 3 gigawatts. Food security forms another pillar of the domestic Middle East. China has roughly 1/6 of the arable land per person that the United States has, and decades of intensive farming have degraded 40% of its existing farmland. Rising geopolitical tensions have made Chinese leaders wary of relying on foreign grain, much of which comes from the US and Brazil. To compensate, Beijing is pouring money into converting deserts into cropland. The oldest method is straw checkerboarding. Workers insert stalks of straw into the sand in a grid to block the wind and allow a layer of topsoil to form. Once stabilized, the grids are planted with drought-resistant shrubs or grasses. The technique has been mechanized since the 2010s. Scientists have added a twist by deploying lab-cultured cyanobacteria that form a biological crust over the sand, speeding the creation of soil from a decade to about 12 months. Through these methods, enormous swaths of desert in Inner Mongolia, Ningxia, and Xinjiang have been reclaimed. As of 2044, China's Green Line in the Yellow River Basin had moved 300 kilometers westward, and around 65 million mu, 4.3 million hectares of desertified land, had been turned into land with stable topsoil. Beijing has also approved plans to convert permanent farmland into high-standard farmland by 2035 and is researching salt-tolerant crops and hydroponic systems that could allow rice cultivation in deserts. Officials hope these measures will help China achieve 92% self-sufficiency in grains and beans by 2033. The Jamestown Foundation notes that desertification control has become a soft power tool. China is exporting these techniques to Central Asia, Africa, and the Middle East as part of its Belt and Road partnerships. While it builds domestic capacity, Beijing is deepening ties with the actual Middle East. Middle Eastern countries received about $39 billion in Chinese Belt and Road investments and construction contracts in 2044, making the region the largest beneficiary of the program. Saudi Arabia alone secured $18.9 billion of that investment, Iraq, $9 billion, and the United Arab Emirates, $3.1 billion. Chinese oil and gas engagement in the region reached record levels, about $24.3 billion, and included an $8 billion refinery deal in Iraq. At the same time, Beijing invested about $11.8 billion in solar, wind, and waste-to-energy projects across the region. By funding both fossil fuel infrastructure and green projects, China positions itself as an indispensable partner for Gulf states seeking to diversify their economies. These investments also reflect a shift in Chinese strategy. According to analysts at GIS Reports, Beijing is moving beyond energy and commerce, pivoting toward diplomacy and security. As U.S. influence wanes in the region, especially after its withdrawal from Afghanistan and amid frustration over its handling of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, China sees an opportunity to become a mediator. It has hosted talks between Iran and Saudi Arabia, between Palestinian factions, and on Syria and Yemen. These mediation efforts have not always succeeded, but they signal China's intention to play a bigger role in regional security. Beijing views the Middle East as part of its greater periphery, an arc of neighboring regions critical to the survival of the party state. Its concept of comprehensive national security includes everything from territorial integrity to resource security and cultural influence. In that framework, fostering a benign environment in the Middle East is not altruism, it is a strategic necessity. But the real questions: why call this accumulation of projects building its own Middle East? And it's because Beijing is trying to internalize the functions that the Middle East has long played for China. Pipelines and ports in Pakistan and Myanmar mirror the oil and gas corridors of the Persian Gulf. Solar farms and reclaimed farmland in Xinjiang echo the Gulf states' efforts to turn deserts into green oases. Soft power campaigns around desertification show that China sees ecological engineering not just as a domestic policy, but as a brand it can export. Meanwhile, heavy Belt and Road investments and mediation efforts in the actual Middle East ensure that Beijing retains influence over external supplies. This dual approach, building redundancy at home while deepening ties abroad, reflects Beijing's assessment that the world is becoming less predictable. It worries that US-dominated sea lanes could be closed and that sanctions could choke off supplies. By building its own Middle East at home, Beijing hopes to cushion its economy. By investing in the real Middle East, it hopes to influence the very region that could otherwise be used against it. But obviously, there are limits. The land corridors carry only a small fraction of China's overall import needs and are vulnerable to terrorism and political upheaval. Turning deserts into farmland and building huge solar farms requires massive amounts of water, fertilizer, and capital. Even with reclaimed land, China still faces a shortage of good soil. Renewable energy cannot yet replace oil in heavy industry, aviation, or petrochemicals. And while Beijing's mediation efforts may improve its image, they also entangle China in complex conflicts far from its borders. Yet the ambition itself is telling. It suggests that China sees the era of easy globalization and US guardianship of sea lanes giving way to a more fragmented multipolar order. In that world, Beijing does not want to be dependent on any single region or route. Building a domestic Middle East, real or metaphorical, is a hedge against that uncertainty and a statement about the kind of superpower China wants to be: self-sufficient, influential, and at the center of its own version of all under heaven.